I just booked the world's longest flight for a whopping $13. Yes, this is the world's longest flight on Singapore Airlines in business class, and I was able to get it for this cost of a few coffees. And in this video, I'm going to explain how I was able to book a $10,000 business class flight across the entire world for just about $13. Today, I'm going to share everything you need to know on how to book cheap flights. Whether you're new to the game or looking for those next level advanced hacks, you're going to want to stick around because later in this video, I'll reveal the trick I used to book this $10,000 flight for just $13. Now, there's so much information out there about booking cheap flights, and I'm going to make it very easy for you and break it down into three main categories. Again, these are the same categories I've used to travel to more than 100 different countries for practically no money at all. The number one tool out there to book and find cheap flights is something that most people don't use for some reason, but it's becoming a little bit more popular. And what I'm talking about is Google Flights. This is the number one best software out there to find and search for cheap flights and to monitor and get alerts about flight changes and price changes for any sort of routes that you're looking at. So most people might think going to Google Flights and just booking your flight through there is the magic sauce, but that's not really the case. You need to know how to use the more advanced features of Google Flights to learn how to find and isolate these cheaper flights. So starting off, the biggest thing is being more flexible. I always start by keeping my dates and destinations a little bit more flexible. For example, let's say you want to travel somewhere in the next few months. Playing around with dates is likely going to have the biggest impact on prices. Google Flights allows you to see the full calendar view of prices, and it allows you to shift what prices is going to be for each week or each day. Another big tip I use is I just want to go from point A to point B, meaning I'm more looking like, hey, I'm in Missouri and I want to go to Europe. So I'm going to be looking for all those airports that are nearby Missouri, St. Louis, Kansas City, Chicago. What are those ways to get cheaply over to Europe? Because I just want to go to Europe. I just want to find a place to go. I'm a little bit flexible there because once you're in Europe, it's insanely cheap to get from destination to destination. So for example, if I'm in Missouri, I might look at a cheap Southwest flight over to Chicago and use Chicago as my hub to find cheap flights to anywhere around Europe. So in this example, once I get this sort of flight path isolated, I'm essentially going to Google Flights, searching Chicago to Europe, and then looking for those cheap direct routes. So typically what I suggest is starting off with a one-way search. And if you can't be as flexible as me, just put where you're at and where you want to go, and then try to isolate those one-way searches. So once you do that, you can kind of find out what routes are going to be the cheapest and which sort of hubs are going to be cheaper. For example, I'm usually flying out of St. Louis a lot. I know that St. Louis is not the best hub, so typically it routes you through Chicago. So in that example, I would just start my search from Chicago in a lot of cases. But again, it's really good to check from St. Louis over to Europe to see what hubs are flying a little bit cheaper. And then I'll basically jot down, okay, Chicago looks like a great hub. JFK looks like a great hub. So I'll start isolating those hubs to find the cheapest flights. And then I start playing around with the dates. So as you can see, once I've isolated the route that I want to find that has the cheapest routes, I'm going ahead and I'm looking 2 to 3 weeks out on each end of where I want to fly. And so that's just the first step. The next step is actually taking it a little bit further and setting up alerts and looking at the price history on Google Flights. You can see the historical data, and that's one of the greatest features about Google Flights, is you can see the historical data and you can see what the flight has been selling on in the past. Typically, if it's a low price, I'll go ahead and book it right then while it's at its lowest. Or occasionally, if it isn't there, I'll monitor it for 2 to 3 weeks and then I'll book it then. In general, what the best booking length is 3 to 4 months out from when you want to fly. You want to start doing your research. And usually what I found is anything around that range is going to be best unless there's some type of crazy event or holiday season happening. So a good rule of thumb is 3 to 4 months out for all of your flight bookings, especially for international flights. And guys, if you learned something new there, you're gonna love this next part. I've partnered up with Amazon's Audible to give you a free copy of my #1 best-selling book, Global Career: How to Work Anywhere and Travel Forever. Global Career has been featured in prestigious publications like Forbes, CNBC, Entrepreneur Magazine, and even Lonely Planet. And with over 500 positive reviews, this book has helped hundreds of thousands earn from anywhere. To get your free copy and start a 30-day free trial of Audible, all you have to do is visit globalcareerbook.com/audio today, or just scan the QR code on the screen here. Did you know that airlines often make mistakes and they'll list a flight price for about $2,000, but sometimes they make the mistake and it's listed for $20. Again, this is what is called mistake fares, or there's just huge discounts in sales. This is one of the best flight techniques to find and isolate cheap flights for anywhere in the world, whether it's domestic or international travel. Again, this is something that is very complicated. It takes a lot of research, and that's why a lot of good services have dedicated 40 to 50 person teams to find and isolate these mistake fares so you don't have to do any of that research. One of the companies that I use personally to buy flights and find these mistake fares is called Going.com, formerly known as Scott's Cheap Flights. The great thing about this is they have a whole team and sort of algorithm that they use to find these mistake fares, and they send you an email based on where you're located to let you know, hey, if you're living in Florida, there's this mistake fare from Miami over to the Maldives for $300. It's going to be booked through this sort of technique, and you can book it today. That's exactly how it works, and I've used their service to find $500 flights out to the Maldives and other places around the world. And the cool thing about these mistake fares is they're always happening, but you have to be a little bit more spontaneous and flexible because usually the dates are within a 2 to 3 month period. One thing to note about mistake fares is they typically honor them because if you're able to book it, you're able to get the ticket, they usually have to honor that for that price. Occasionally, some airlines will just refund you and say, hey, we made a mistake, we're going to refund you. But I would say that only happens about 5 to 10% of the time. So using a company like Going.com, the great thing about them is they have a free program that you can sign up for, or they have a paid one, and I'll leave a link below in the description where you can sign up for either today. Booking a $10,000 business class flight for only $13 might seem impossible to most people, but I'm gonna break down exactly how I booked the world's longest flight on Singapore Airlines business class for just 13 bucks. So essentially, this is what is called travel hacking, or utilizing points and miles to get really cheap flights. So essentially, the trick breaks down into 2 easy to follow sort of situations. Situation number 1 is accumulating your points. And the step 2 is going to be maximizing those points. So starting off at the first part is you need to figure out a technique to start racking up points and miles by opening up new credit cards with generous sign-up bonuses. Now, don't get too excited. You want to be responsible here, and you only want to sign up for cards that you're going to be able to hit the sign-up bonus with your natural spend. Typically, they require you spending $3,000 to $6,000 over the next 3 to 6 months. Once you hit that bonus, you're going to get anywhere between 100 to 150,000 points. So what the technique is you open up the card, you hit the sign-up bonus, and then you get all the points to book your next trip. Now, that's only half of the equation. The other half is actually utilizing these points for their maximum value. What I see is a lot of people are able to accumulate points, but they drop the ball on maximizing the value of the points. And essentially, if you've ever traded in your points for cash back, gift cards, booked directly through the portal on Amex or Chase, you're likely not maximizing your points. The reason is most maximal flight bookings, let's say 95% of them, require some sort of point transfer from Chase or Amex to an airline, or directly from another airline to a third-party airline. Luckily for this example, booking Singapore Airlines, I used Chase points. They had a nice little promotion. I was able to transfer them over to Singapore Airlines for a discount, and I only had to transfer about 100,000 points to book this flight for $13 in taxes. So again, this is the power of booking and maximizing points, but there's a lot of nuances that go into it. And if you want to learn more about those nuances, I'll leave a link below where you can actually learn a little bit more about travel hacking, and you can uncover my entire 40 video masterclass about how to get started with booking cheap flights, 5-star resorts for practically free. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit subscribe about the new videos I'm putting out every single week. And I'll also leave another video up here that was hand selected just for you.